Good evening, everyone. I call to order the November 12th, 2025 Downers Grove Public Library Board of Library Trustees monthly meeting. Thank you for coming out to the library. Today, as everyone knows, November, we moved the dates a little bit in light of Thanksgiving, so we're here tonight. Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
November is Native American Heritage Month, and I will take a moment to share the library's land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the Downers Grove Public Library sits on the unceded, traditional, and ancestral homelands of Native peoples. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the indigenous peoples who have been caretakers of the land throughout generations, past and present. We invite you to learn more about the genocide and forced displacement by non-Native settlers and the ongoing injustices against Native peoples. Can we call the roll?
Yes. Trustee Gagani is absent this evening. Trustee Humphries.
Here.
Trustee Kuntia.
Here.
Trustee Williams.
Here.
President Topic.
Here. First item on the agenda is our consent agenda, which constitutes consists of the October 22nd, 2025 regular meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Can we just, I've always wondered, can we just voice vote this?
You can voice vote
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up is public comment. We're gonna set up with the podium over here. Rest assured, the mic will pick you up from over here. We'll keep it to no more than 5 minutes as usual. I'm just getting my timer ready. And whoever would like to begin is welcome to do so.
Good evening. Eileen Breiner, resident. I come tonight to speak about the betrayal of trust that many have had in the library's nonpartisanship. I've seen it betrayed in the past, but not to the degree of this most recent betrayal. On October 16th of this year, the library gave a presentation right here in this room by Common Cause. Common Cause is a 501c4 organization. 501c4s can engage in political activities, including lobbying and endorsing candidates. I did attend the presentation. Here's just a few of the ideas promoted that night. The website, commoncause.org/Illinois, is full of partisan political ideas. It's a totally radical left website. The Common Cause speaker recommended going to this website a number of times. The Race Act was promoted, and the idea of prison gerrymandering was presented. These are partisan ideas. The speaker recommended going to commoncause.org/Illinois and signing a petition to support the Race Act. This is solicitation and campaign advocacy. At the end, the presenter asked participants to go to a QR code and fill out information so that they could be sent more information. This is further solicitation. Common Cause was a sponsor of the No Kings rally, but that didn't seem to bother Mary McDonald or raise any red flags at all. Mary McDonald is the employee who set this presentation up with Common Cause. The program was partisan, even with a heads up to clean it up from the Board of Trustees. This is clear partisanship and political activism. It should be prohibited at our library. The library has not permitted political activism or even education from the other side of the aisle. For example, I requested a program done by Turning Point USA, which is a 501c3, an educational organization, and was turned down. Yet a 501c4 was allowed to present here. Why is one allowed while the other is not? I would think a 501c3 would get approval before a 501c4. This is clear discrimination based on viewpoint. This was the second time Common Cause has presented at this library. The library has become a partisan participant in politics and betrayed the trust of the public. This must end. Jen Rajewski, the assistant director, knew that Common Cause was doing the program and allowed it. Mary McDonald set up the program and failed to get the library contract signed by Common Cause and the library. This is a complete failure to do her job. Both of these employees need to be held accountable for their lack of proper oversight of their responsibilities. They must be reminded that the library is supposed to be a neutral institution, here to serve all constituents. Their viewpoints must never be given preference. I want a written warning put in their personnel files. I call on the board members to meet your duty to insist on equal treatment under the law, consistent with the oath of office that you took to comply with state and federal constitutions. Finally, I want a written response to my complaint via email, including actions taken toward employee discipline. Thank you.
Do we have any other comments? Okay, we will move on to trustee comments. Dave, you want to start?
Other than I did attend that particular session that is under discussion, and my comments are in the public record already, and I don't feel moved to make any further comments about it.
Is that all you had to say, Dave? Nothing else? You sure?
I'm sorry?
Is that all? No other comments? No? I just want to make sure I don't cut you off.
No, you don't cut
Okay.
me. No, I have said it before. I do not believe that it was a partisan presentation, regardless of the fact that the organization sometimes can be partisan, but they were cautioned against it for that presentation, and in my view, followed that.
Do you want to go
Yeah.
first?
Sure, mine's very short. I want to thank everyone who filled out a survey. We had 449 responses, which is incredible. And I know in the beginning, people were like, oh, no one's going to fill out a survey. But clearly, whatever you're feeling, people feel a lot about our library. So 449 responses, and they were like really thoughtful responses. These weren't just like one sentence like, yeah, it's a great library, or we hate this. It was very thorough and thoughtful, and clearly people felt very passionately about whatever it is they had to say. And so I just want to thank, and I think probably everyone in this room filled one out, but also all the other people who aren't in this room who filled one out. So thank you.
Sure. I echo that. I want to start, though, with a thank you to Matt and Julie for attending the Village Council meeting last night. This was covering the budget, our budget. Other units of government presented their budget as well. And it was refreshing to hear the council members support our pay-as-you-go plan, which we believe is quite responsible and appropriate in the current economic environment. I learned something. I often learn something, but I learned something last night about the library, and that is that we have coordination between the village social worker and the library social worker, and I think that's an important element of the function of having two social workers. And also Julie addressed sort of they have differing hours, and so that helps service the community as it relates to social services and information in different ways. So there's overlap, but it's a Venn diagram. I'm also grateful to the Village Council members who acknowledge that there's improved communication between the Library Board of Trustees and the Village Council. I've worked hard towards that end over the last year, and so I appreciate them at least voicing that. And I look forward to continuing that. There was one thing that was misstated last night, and it related to the presentation of our budget in advance of our approval. The Village Council has in prior years received that budget in advance of our August meeting and had an opportunity to provide feedback. So while one council member said that was sort of a new thing, started this year, and it was something I definitely advocated for continuing, it was a continuation. We had done it previously. SWAPNA had sent that budget in 24, for example. Okay, I'm going to address civic engagement programming, but I'm not going to address Common Cause specifically. I'm going to talk sort of more high level. That particular event I wanted to attend. I tried to attend. Fortunately, I had to be in my work's Lake Forest office that day. Anyone that's been down 294 in the current environment knows that it takes a long time to get back. It took me over 2 hours to get back, but I tried to attend just as Dave did. I did not see the presentation, so I really can't opine on sort of the specifics. Let's just keep it that. But I do have opinions about a civic engagement of programming. I believe it aligns with a public library and this specific public library's purpose and function. And it's for several reasons. I'll name a few. Civic engagement programming fosters informed participation. It promotes dialogue and understanding. It provides equitable access to information and knowledge. The library is a trusted and inclusive space, and as such, it's a setting in which civic engagement programming is productive. It also engages the community in the social sphere, and it creates a sense of interconnectedness and improves civic literacy, which, I mean, I took the US citizenship test, but I'm sure there's plenty of people that couldn't pass that. With that said, however, I think viewpoint diversity should be a higher priority at this library. And I believe that's because we should be representing the whole community. And I believe that even an ideological minority deserves some representation. But it doesn't necessarily mean equal representation. It doesn't mean, in my mind, I mean, different people can view this differently. But it doesn't mean we have X event, so we definitely have to have Y event, as if there's a universe of binary outcomes, or binary perspectives. In fact, I think our sort of mission around programming and how it's selected looks at multiple factors. So community interest is one of those factors. I also think we should have a discussion around viewpoint diversity and how we can foster it. As part of that discussion, I would also like to discuss a sort of thematic thing that is resonating today, and that's deplatforming. It's been discussed in progressive spaces for a long time, but actually it's been discussed in conservative spaces recently, where Tucker Carlson interviewed Nick Fuentes. LaGrange's own Nick Fuentes, actually. And I have a colleague who went to high school with him. So I think when you talk about the deplatforming, it sometimes is unproductive. I think that where you restrict speech, you don't necessarily get rid of the kind of speech that we don't find constructive as a society. And so I certainly am not for deplatforming any speech that I find distasteful. But I do think there are some lines that we need to draw as a society, and hate speech, misinformation, disinformation, that shouldn't be amplified in the same way as information that is helpful to a community. With that said, last point on this, is it's difficult because who gets to make a decision as to whether something is hateful or disinformation or misinformation? If we're just relying on a biased perspective in making that judgment call, then you're going to get biased outcomes. And so I think we have to be mindful of that too. So I lean towards permitting events. I personally wouldn't have a problem with a Turning Point event. The library sponsoring event does not mean it endorses those ideas. And to me, partisanship is not just because there's ideology behind something. Partisanship does mean sort of soliciting, proselytizing, and so on. So having ideology, including ideologies that I don't personally subscribe to at the library, in library programming, is something that I think is a good thing, personally. So that's it on civic engagement programming and more generally on sort of how that interrelates with library programming and viewpoint diversity. The last thing I want to emphasize in my public comments is probably the most important point. We're in the midst of a library director search. That library director search is the most important thing that the Library Board of Trustees does. Our role is oversight and selection of the library director. There's other things, of course, but that is our primary function. And so I think it's very important that we get this process right. And we're leaning on expertise, obviously. And so while culture wars are interesting, I respectfully think there's something else today that is more important to be discussing. Thank you.
Thank you. Yesterday was Veterans Day. I just want to thank all of our local veterans and acknowledge them as part of Veterans Day. Second thing I wanted to address is the behavior of some of our adolescent patrons, and I guess a message to parents. I'm kind of, I've had it with the way that some adolescents are behaving in our library. We recently had someone ride a bicycle through the library at great danger to, especially our older patrons and younger patrons. I don't think it's funny. And so I would just encourage any parents who are watching who think that their kids might be coming to the library and trying to show off to their friends and think that doing these things aren't going to have repercussions, that I at least personally will want to see that that we have the full extent of what we can do as available discipline, including suspensions, the costs of mediating any of these kinds of things. I'm just thoroughly fed up, and so I suspect I'm not the only one who's frustrated, and I thank our staff who put up with that. And I'll just kind of leave it at that. I understand that kids do dumb things, but some of these things are just outright dangerous. I will just sort of briefly address Common Cause. I did receive an email from a resident expressing some concerns. I had our lawyer look at our policies and the applicable law and provide an opinion as to whether those were violated, and they were not. That has been provided to that resident. If anyone else is interested in learning more about that, they're welcome to contact us for that. But in my mind, that is a settled issue. I thank our staff for putting on these civic engagement programs. I think they're very important. To Nathan's point, I'm happy to have a broader discussion about viewpoint diversity and what kind of programs we do as we look ahead to what's coming in the future. But I'll just reiterate that we took the complaint seriously. We sent it to our lawyer to look at, and there were no laws or policies that were violated in the course of that program.
May I make one other brief comment that I meant to? I waved this in the air, but I want to thank everyone, all the 400 and how many was it? 49 people who submitted statements to us regarding the new director's search. They're all right here. I had to print it on big paper, so I printed it out. I could read it because otherwise the print would be too small. And I suspect virtually everyone in this room submitted something to it. And I hope you did, and I thank you for doing that.
Any last comments? That takes us to the library director's report.
And as an Army brat, daughter of a man who served for many years, and granddaughter, niece, great niece of many who served, I do want to acknowledge all of our veterans and thank them for their service to our country. They've done great work for us all. There's not much for my librarian's report this week because we met very, very recently. We do not have financials for this packet because we are too early in the month. We will be meeting in December for at least a very brief meeting that will allow us to approve the November invoices in arrears, and then as usual in January, we will approve both December and January. But we're all on track with our budget, and Caitlin's keeping a good eye on everything for us. I also wanted to remind you all that we will be transitioning to the Diligent Community software for our board packets in the coming months. But between that change and our web accessibility changes, there will be some changes coming to the board packet and its format. So we invite everyone, as that happens, to provide feedback to us so that we can continue, so we can make sure that those packets contain the information that you need. We are hoping to have that first packet be the January board packet, but we shall see. Some of our training has been a little rocky.
So when you say, Julie, that things will be changing, will things be removed, or will things, I mean, like, what does that mean exactly?
They could be removed, they could be different. Some of it has to do with the way that Diligent presents the information, and some of it has to do with the web accessibility. In order for documents to be accessible, we have to make sure that they are screen reader compatible, etc. To have any of those documents. It's very difficult to do with PDFs, and unfortunately some of the reports that we generate currently are only PDF, so we are looking at what our options are for those. You may get things, especially to begin, we may be having things in narrative format that you've been seeing in a graphic format as we hammer out the best practices for presenting that information in a way that works both with the Diligent software and complies with the web accessibility guidelines.
Does that, never mind, I'll ask, I'll think about it and then I'll ask later.
Things like pie charts, where the only thing that indicates the number or the information is color, is not web accessible. And so you have to have a different version of that, and so we are looking at how we can present that information differently.
Am I right in saying that there's a ADA compliance date, or there's some sort of date
Yes,
at which
yes,
what date is that?
The web accessibility compliance date is April of 2026, and so we're just trying to get ahead and make sure that we are fully compliant ahead of that date.
Thank you.
And that was all I had.
Do we have any other questions for Julie? Okay, that takes us to new business. Our first item is 2026 holiday closings.
Yes, and you all passed the policy at our last meeting. This is simply the 2026 list of holiday closings and our administrative closings for 2026 that include all of those new ones.
So this just sort of
Reflects
matches
the
up
new
with
stuff.
the policy we discussed. Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the 2026 holiday closings list?
I move that we approve the 2026 holiday closings as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, we'll do voice vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, next up is one of my favorite things to be able to do. Let me just get it teed up. Item 9B is our resolution recognizing milestone anniversaries. This resolution is passed annually to recognize the milestone anniversaries of staff in the past year. Each staff member receiving a milestone anniversary is recognized usually at the annual Staff in Service Day and receives a copy of the resolution. The staff member also receives one personal day to be used during the year following the milestone anniversary. Why don't we vote on it, and then I will read it after that. Do we have a motion to approve the staff recognition resolution?
So,
A second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
and I would like it read.
None opposed? Very good. I'm honored to read it. Unless you would like to read it, Dave. You seemed excited. I was just giving you an
Well,
opportunity.
I can't. I have it in front of me. Go right ahead.
Resolution number 2025-2, a resolution of appreciation for the service of staff members who have celebrated milestone service anniversaries in 2025. Whereas 7 members of the Downers Grove Public Library staff have celebrated milestone anniversaries in 2025, totaling 55 years of service as follows. 5 years of service: Scott Anderson, Andrew Cook, Rosie Llewellyn, Jill Patelka. 10 years of service: Allison Rennell, Tony Jones, and 15 years of service, Sandy Fuelan. And whereas the committed services of these staff members have contributed significantly to the library's high level of performance and high reputation in the community, and whereas 2025 has provided many new opportunities for service, including providing library cards to all teachers in District 58, expanding the programming and services that are offered to teens in the community, and developing plans and equipment for a makerspace. Therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Library Trustees recognizes with great appreciation the dedication and perseverance of those staff members and thanks them for their outstanding work. Unanimously approved this 12th day of November 2025 by the Board of Library Trustees of the Village of Downers Grove. And I would just like to give a round of applause to all those staff. Okay, next item is Library Director Job Description Review, which is a discussion item.
And this has been reviewed by the Equity Advisory Team, and we took a look at it as with the HR manager, Caitlin Babylaitis, and also reviewed by Diders and Todd, our executive search firm. So we've made a couple of changes, wanted to give it to you all for a final look-see if there's anything that you would like added, changed, edited, etc.
I have a few thoughts.
Yeah.
I'll preface this by saying I suspect most of these will be shot down. So, okay. So, first question for me is whether we should predetermine that the library director will be the FOIA officer. My view is that that shouldn't be in the job description unless it's a legal mandate. I turn to our expert in that regard. It's not a legal mandate. I didn't think it would be. Okay. Second point. My view is that the job description should not say that the library director oversees DEI. My preference is that it says that the library director oversees EDI rather than, as it currently does, says that the library director supports EDI. I don't think it should be using, I think it's better that it's neutral language in the job description. We do have a strategic plan. That strategic plan is very clear about the library's interest in promoting EDI and looking at EDI as a matrix for making decisions. That's already codified in the strategic plan. So any library director would be responsible for implementing the strategic plan, and therefore I just think more neutral language allows for anyone that sees this to not be discouraged just because they do or do not support EDI. So I'd like to get the widest net of applicants, including ones that do not support EDI. Okay, last.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
you're suggesting removing that line?
No, I'm just suggesting changing it from support to oversee.
Oversee, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Sorry, I was not particularly clear in how I said that. Okay, so third point. From my point of view, we should discuss the credential requirements. Currently, it follows general library policy around job descriptions. I do not follow typical progressive orthodoxy on credentials. My perspective is particularly as it relates to technical fields, that credentials are important requirements. I don't think everyone's going to agree with me on that point, but I'm fine with sticking with what, I mean, it's not a hill I'm going to die on, but my preference would be to say MLS preferred rather than say or equivalent experience. That's just my point of view. Okay, fourth point, I think we should add knowledge of state laws related to library administration to the list of relevant knowledge areas. That's an important thing for any library director to have. And then I had one final question, and I don't know who this question's for, but will the library director have an employment agreement? That's something I would like to know at some point. Thank you.
We do not currently have an employment agreement.
Okay.
And just FYI on the FOIA officer thing, that is actually stated in policy, so we reflected it here in the job description.
Yeah, and to be clear, I'm not criticizing any of the existing language. I'm just giving my input, which again may differ from everyone else's input. I'm just one voice here.
So if we deleted that, we would have to change the policy,
We wouldn't necessarily, well,
I guess. Sounds like it.
you wouldn't necessarily have to have it in here, it would just be
Oh, I see
within
what you're
the
saying.
policy.
Not all the
So
policies are reflected in the job
It's
description.
which came first, the chicken or the egg?
Yeah, so sort of interrelatedly, my view on credentials, the reason why I'm comfortable with not following what we do for other positions is because I think the library director position is unique, and so that we should be having a discussion about whether doing something differently for this specific position is appropriate given the uniqueness of this position.
Can I respond to that?
Yeah.
I disagree
I
with
know.
you. Because I think that people who are applying for this position and who are going through the process of Diners and Todd looking at resumes are going to only be choosing people who have, worked their way up and have the knowledge and skills to be a library director. So maybe there's someone who's, started in the library when they were 19 years old and have held various positions. So I think it's a dishonor to people who maybe don't have that degree to not even consider them if they have all the knowledge and skills. I'm not done.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I don't need to kick me about it.
And I do remember, and I can't remember the meeting, and I was looking for the exact quote that you used, Julie, but I believe it was during when Van did her presentation. Julie made a comment that was something to the effect of, she doesn't do a lot of that MLS kind of stuff. She's doing a lot of the budgets and the managing of people, and that programming and a lot of the other stuff is being done by an incredible managerial team and then a staff. So I think it's a discount, and I think it's a disservice to people who have who maybe couldn't get that degree for whatever reason, for us not to even consider them. And again, if their resume rises to the top because their resume shows that they have those knowledge and those skills, then I don't think it's fair for us to not to be willing to talk to those people.
I think all of those are valid points. I think the only thing I'd counter with is that I'm advocating for these degrees being preferred, and so I would still consider candidates without those degrees. And I think I would expect the search firm in going through the resumes to consider ones that it's sort of not necessary, but sort of preferred. I don't know. So I think the counterpoint to my distinction is people will simply not reply if they see that it's degree requirement preferred. They'll think, well, I don't have a chance if I don't fit this normative pathway to the position. So I think there are various things to balance here, and I'm not necessarily saying my perspective is appropriately balancing all of those things, but to me, I thought a robust discussion around this was something that was worthwhile given the importance of this specific position.
First a question. In that section, education and qualifications, was it just the first one you were addressing, the degree?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I thought that was handled by the word equivalent in here. It says ALA accredited MLS or MLIS or an equivalent combination of education and relevant experience. And I thought that covered us if we wanted to consider a person who did not have that degree. Now, am I wrong with the word equivalent?
I read it that way as
That's
well.
how I read it as well.
Because I basically agree. I mean, I've read information, actually some statements in these questions and answers here that maybe we ought to hire somebody from outside the library. I'm not sure I agree with that totally yet, but I think that if a person presented themselves to us that had the knowledge and skills in perhaps a different field, but we thought was relevant and equivalent, we would consider them.
Understood. I agree. I think that's really hard to measure. How do you assess whether it's an equivalent combination of those two things?
Well, I mean, that's why we have consultants to help us through that, right? And we have staff to help us through that. I think we're all kind of saying the same thing in a different way. I mean, I think I don't necessarily. I mean, I loosely would say those degrees are the prior. I mean, they're sort of the standard, right? Because we're saying or an equivalent combination of education and relevant experience. So you would still need to, in my mind, show that whatever that other experience is equivalent. So if somebody came and they had a master's in public administration,
Mm-hmm.
and they had a lot of history working in libraries, I think that I could see that potentially being sufficiently equivalent, right? I mean, so I take your point about the credential is important, and I don't want to discount the value of that. But I think, in my mind, the way that this is worded, I think covers that. And I think what you're describing is maybe more about the fine-tuning the language in like the posting materials as opposed to just the job description. But
That's fair.
and you know, I could see both sides of whether we should say preferred or whether we should say equivalent. But
Well, so this goes to another question. If our goal is to consider a broader pool of candidates, and we're only posting to things that people within the library industry are looking at, then we're not likely to get a broader set of candidates.
I mean,
So we're really looking for someone that works within the library, and we're not looking for someone that's worked in the nonprofit sector for 20 years. Non-public sector.
I would be probably very cautious about a candidate who does. I mean, the second bullet is 8 years of relevant public library experience.
Fair point. So
I don't think we're looking to bring someone from outside the library world without library experience.
Okay, that's fair. I just wanted to have the discussion. I didn't necessarily want to change everyone's mind.
No, it was. I think it's a worthwhile kind of discussion. On the to knowledge of laws, I think that suggestion is good. anyone disagree with that?
No.
The FOIA officer part, this hasn't matched the policy, as I understand it. That doesn't mean that there can't be additional FOIA officers. I don't mind the idea of the director being a FOIA officer and ultimately being responsible. We can have a discussion about whether that should change, but.
Yeah, I tend to differ. I think it's a bit like the CEO also being the executive chair of the board, that you're essentially reporting to yourself. And I think that by having the library director as the FOIA officer screening public accountability and transparency, that it's sort of holding himself to account. And I think that presents a slight conflict of interest, and therefore it would be better that it was someone else. But again, I don't think we have to address this here, because as you point out, we can have a discussion, a policy discussion at a later point.
And then on the EDI supports versus overseas, do people have, David Bernali, thoughts on that?
Sure.
Why'd you point at me? I think that saying supports is important. Yes, it's in the strategic plan, but all of our other job descriptions use that language, so it's consistent with our other job descriptions. And I think that it's important that it's stated, that it's openly stated that is a priority at our library. So I don't think just it being in the strategic plan is enough. So that's why I did.
I prefer the word support. I think we could probably spend the rest of the evening here discussing what equity, diversity, and inclusion means, but I would prefer leaving the word support.
Yeah, I think I agree. If it was to say supports the library's equity, diversity, and inclusion efforts, does that address, Nathan, what you're getting at? And then Bernali and Dave, what's your thought on that?
Well, since that implies a reference to the strategic plan, which goes into some detail, and our relationship with the advisory committee and the documentation that relates to those issues, I think I could live with that. I don't know that it's necessary, but I'm not going to go to the mat over that one.
I don't have preference between either of those, the current formulation or what you just proposed, Matt. I think, from my perspective, this is something that can come up in discussions with the candidates themselves and to hear their philosophy on EDI, which is a nuanced conversation that that you would have with anyone. And so, my general view is just keep it neutral here, so that it doesn't influence the candidate pool that we receive. That doesn't mean that we can't be skeptical of a candidate who seems resistant to implementing the values that we have in our strategic plan once we're actually talking to that candidate. But to me, it's a nuanced conversation, and there are a lot of gray areas around anyone's individual view on EDI. Strong supporters of EDI can nonetheless think certain elements of it are going too far, and so if it says supports, it emphasizes something that I think sends a signal to whoever's looking at this. And maybe collectively we want that signal because it's consistent with our strategic plan and our personal philosophy. If that's where we land as a group, I'm fine with that. But I thought I'd raise the issue since, it's oversee versus support. It's not like we're not saying this is one part of the job. We're just, again, just changing the verb. But, okay, I mean, it seems like it's 3 votes to 1, so I'll let it die.
Well,
Yeah.
this is a discussion, right?
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
isn't we're not voting on anything here.
Well, but
Well, I
we
mean,
have to come to a consensus as to what it's going to look like, right?
We do, but I think we're also going to talk with our consultants about
Okay.
this before it gets
Sure.
finalized. I think, I'm reading this as a job description, and it's saying that one of the job duties is to support EDI in the workplace, which is part of our strategic plan.
Yeah.
So I think it accurately describes what the job duty is. I think I understand the point you're getting at is you think this reads, I think, like it's sort of a philosophical support for EDI more broadly, but in the context of a job description, at least I didn't read it that way. In a job posting, I kind of see your point.
Okay,
that
so
we
will
think
the
about
candidates
both.
see this?
I assume, do we know?
Yes.
Is
Yeah.
it-
I-
Feel free to jump
Alex,
in.
did we put the job description linked to the job ad?
We can.
Is that standard
We don't
practice?
link to the job ad for the candidates that we decide to interview. We send it to them ahead of their first meeting.
So there you go.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
not a human resources person, but I have always viewed a job description as a starting point. And depending upon the skills and temperament and other aspects of the candidate being considered or hired, the job description might shift. And I'm not sure I ever viewed a job description as a hard and fast document that if somebody doesn't, I mean, there's a line in here that says they attend all meetings of the Board of Library Trustees. Well, if they're sick and can't come to a meeting for one, we're not going to fire them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a silly example, but there's some flexibility in here. What it does do, on the other hand, as Nathan has pointed out, is it can both limit and define the candidate pool. And that's what I'm wrestling with.
Okay.
I think we should move on.
Any other discussion on the?
Do I understand that we're going to review this with our consultants before we finalize it?
I think, yes.
Just
do that.
we will
Yeah.
continue this.
We're not
Yeah.
necessarily, we're not going to vote it.
Right.
Right.
Well, then, I think we have discussed it quite a bit, and I think we're
Yep.
perhaps ready to move on and
Yeah.
think that we will discuss it among ourselves and with them, and we'll vote it probably at the next meeting or
I
another
agree.
meeting.
I thank everyone for discussing it.
Sure. No, and thank you for raising
I
your thoughts.
thank you very much. You've raised some good issues.
Okay, item number 10 is unfinished business. Anyone have any unfinished business to attend to? No? No?
Is that the last item?
We have no executive session, so the last item is adjourned. Did you have something else?
I would, unrelated kind of thing, but
Yeah.
I
go
was
ahead.
strongly reminded by the fact that yesterday was Veterans Day. And I would like to, even though I'm perhaps known as a pacifist, I strongly support those who serve our country in the armed forces, even if I might differ occasionally with some of the leadership. But I certainly support those who are in the service and have served our country over the many years. As a good example of that, or a very strong example of it, I would refer you to the website of the Downers Grove Historical Society, the current website, which calls out a former Downers Grove resident, Fred Lester, who was a World War II casualty, who was a hospital worker, who at Okinawa crawled on his stomach under fire to rescue an injured Marine, dragged him back to behind the line, took fire himself and was injured, and as a hospital serviceman, knew that his own wounds were fatal, but coached other hospital workers in how to treat the Marine. The Marine survived. Fred Lester did not. And that brought Veterans Day back into clear focus for me.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay. We do have a committee of the whole with our consultants after this, but our regular meeting is now adjourned.